Former United States Attorney General Bill Barr reportedly told The Federalist that Representative Jamie Raskin lied about the Biden family corruption investigation. Raskin claimed that Barr ended an investigation into a source's accusation that Biden agreed to $1 million bribe, according to The Federalist. Barr said it's not true. It wasn't closed down. On the contrary, it was sent to Delaware for further investigation.
Raskin reportedly said, "What I learned was that Attorney General Barr named Scott Brady, who is the U.S. Attorney for Western Pennsylvania, to head up a group of prosecutors who would look into all the allegations related to Ukraine. And after Rudy Giuliani surfaced these allegations, Brady's team looked into the FD 1023 in August, determined that there was no grounds to escalate from an initial assessment to a preliminary investigation, and so they called an end to the investigation." So recall that this has been kind of Raskin's line on this dispute between FBI Director Christopher Wray and Representative James Comer. James Comer has sought to make this document public. The FBI said, no, we can't do that. There's been a fight over subpoena, contempt, that kind of stuff. Finally, FBI Director Wray said, well, okay, you can see the document and Raskin can see the document. And Comer has said, great, but also I still want everyone to be able to see the document. Raskin has said if there was a there, the Trump administration and Bill Barr, when this first came to light, would have done something about it, but they did nothing about it. So that shows you that they really didn't think there was anything to it. So the news here is Bill Barr is pushing back against that, telling the Federalist that the idea that we didn't do anything about it is not true. We referred it for investigation. We gave it to a team. Now that team, it seems, based on what Raskin is saying, ultimately did nothing with it. But that's a little bit different than Bill Barr saying that Bill Barr looked at this and said there's nothing to it.
Sure, I get that, but it does feel like a distinction without a difference. If ultimately it was enough to investigate it somewhat more, but then they did investigate it and there was nothing there. If anything, that does seem to shore up Raskin's claim that there wasn't anything there. Oh, you investigated it even more and you still didn't find anything? Well, I think you escalated it and you still didn't find anything?
Well, I think what conservatives will wonder is, every person further removed from Bill Barr, who is this person and who are the team and who are the investigators, and are they actually motivated to bring Joe Biden to justice if that's what's called for? Frankly, there are many conservatives who feel betrayed by Bill Barr himself, without getting into all of that over election stuff, and he is, I think, among people on the right, not actually seen necessarily as someone who was sufficiently motivated.
This is
Trump,
the problem. We're talking about actions that took place in a Trump Justice Department.
Right.
Then Trump turns around, as he is wont to do, and criticizes all the people that he hires, he oversaw, and who he put in charge, because they didn't come to the conclusion that he is right in all things and that Biden is wrong in all things. I am no fan of Joe Biden. I think that it is clear that at very least there was untoward nepotistic style behavior happening with his son in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. However, at a certain point, it cannot be the case that our conclusions are always being driven by, well, this hurts Trump or this doesn't hurt Biden, therefore X, Y, and Z person must be corrupt. And it's a difficult argument to make because there obviously is so much politicization on both sides around all of these sorts of issues. But at this point, we're talking about a Trump Justice Department, former Trump acolytes who made the decision not to continue investigating something because there was no there. And it's not clear what, in fact, will be satisfactory to people at this point, satisfactory to Trump supporters. And frankly, they're pushing so hard to make this document public. At a certain point, I really hope this is the smoking gun they're looking for, because they've made such a big deal out of the concealment of the document, that if there's anything short of a videotape transcript in the document of Biden saying, gosh, I love doing all this corruption with my son, they're going to have egg on their face.
Sure. And this is, to my mind, the best criticism of Trump, and the one I think more people pursuing the Republican nomination should lead with when talking to his supporters and followers. If anything can possibly break them of their worship, maybe nothing can, but you need to point out that he did not drain any swamp. He did not. So much of wrongdoing that happened with respect to free speech and law enforcement and foreign policy Trump's agenda being thwarted, conservatives not being heard or being silenced. So much of it was happening while Trump was in office. He didn't do anything about it. He did not pick the best people. He did not pick people who were going to correct these problems. Business went on as usual, if not outright accelerating in its violations of civil liberties and free speech. And no one noticed or cared until it affected Trump himself. And you might like what he says, but you should care about what he does. And his lack of competence, his incaution with documents, as I keep phrasing it, matters because you want someone to actually get the job done, accomplish these principles. And I think he should have already demonstrated to you that he's not that person because it all happened under his watch.
Yes, and his vulnerabilities are what they are. Like, take someone like Joe Biden. There's nothing intrinsically problematic about slurring your words or being gaffe prone. In the grand scheme of things, if there was an amazing candidate who told awkward stories from time to time, but who fought for the working class, I would be like, why are you talking so much about these gaffes or the fact that he tripped and fell or whatever? The problem with Biden is that he's not that amazing candidate, and what you have left with is someone who is already going to have a tough time at it and has all these built-in vulnerabilities. And Trump is getting to a place where, okay, the vulnerabilities are what they are. And now you have a choice not to erase those vulnerabilities. You already have the prosecutions against you, the indictments, it's happening. But what you do have an opportunity to do is to continue to show people why they should like you anyway.
Right.
And I'm concerned that if he keeps pressing on these issues where he seems to be losing ground and losing opportunities to cast himself as a victim, without balancing that out with continuing to remind people why they like him in the first place. I would argue faux populist, but regardless, populist rhetoric that he deployed in 2016, talking about all the ways that neoliberalism and late-stage capitalism have failed Americans. Trade deals, NAFTA, jobs moved overseas, blah, 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 talking about how strong his economy was when he was president. That is what he could do to balance out the negativity from some of these stories, at the same time that he still just has the veneer of having been politically prosecuted. But when it becomes his entire focus, I worry that he's going to start losing ground.
Well, as we said yesterday, we covered developments into the GOP House Oversight's investigation into alleged Biden family corruption. And since then, there's been a temper tantrum on the mainstream media. Let's watch.
But all these things about like the Biden crime family, this, that, the other, they keep pushing and they keep finding absolutely nothing. And it ends up at the end of the day just being an embarrassment for them. And as Caddy said, most Americans just don't care about this unless you're the wife of a Supreme Court justice that's talking about putting the Biden crime family on barges outside of Gitmo.
I don't know if Ginny Thomas is literally the only person on earth who cares about alleged improper behavior by the Biden family. Meanwhile, MSNBC also questioned House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries on the investigations into the Biden family.
We heard from Congressman Comer in recent days, disregarding, what he said, making clear that polls are what's driving some of this investigation. And now an effort from some Republicans to hold the FBI director in contempt. Can we get you to weigh in on that, sir?
Well, I think what we've seen is that individuals who pretend to be a party of law and order are really just a party of lawlessness and disorder. Joe's done a great job of pointing this out, every step of the way. These are people who supported a violent insurrection where there was an assault not just on the Capitol, but on Capitol police officers, and then refused to recognize their service, their bravery, their valor. So this is just part of that lawlessness and disorder that I think we've seen coming from far too many extreme MAGA Republicans on the other side of the aisle. They want to defund the FBI. They want to investigate FBI agents. Now they want to hold the FBI director in contempt. By the way, an FBI director that was nominated by Donald Trump.
And Democratic Representative Dan Goldman weighed in on the allegation that the FBI has information showing that Biden engaged in corruption as VP.
This is complete garbage, and if you don't have to take my word for it, because the Trump DOJ, as you just said, looked into this specific document and they determined that it was not worth pursuing these allegations. This is a complete nothing burger that they are trying to launder through official committees of Congress once again in order to politically harm President Biden. There is nothing here. There is no merit to any of this, and there is no reason to pursue a contempt of Congress charge.
So again, and the previous, that was Hakeem Jeffries, did say one thing, again, I agreed with, and my previous comments are geared to that. Yes, the one who appointed Christopher Wray was Donald Trump.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw some Trump people try to go after DeSantis for Christopher Wray because, like, oh, DeSantis supported, or like had made a nice statement at the time about the job Christopher Wray will do, and they actually implied that he had voted for Christopher, but he didn't because he was in the House, not a senator. And also, he put out a nice statement. Yeah, I hope Christopher Wray does a good job. Trump appointed him. Mm-hmm. Trump appointed him. Mm-hmm. It's so absurd. But that aside, we've done a lot of Trump criticism in this in our remarks here. Look, if there's nothing, maybe there's nothing to it. I'm willing to believe that, or it was oversold. Fine, but the secrecy with which the FBI has proceeded is making people, I think, giving reasonable concerns.
What's the secrecy exactly?
Well, let's just see the document. They said we can't see the document. If we can't see it because an investigation's ongoing, then say that. But they said that. But now they're saying there's nothing there. So then why can't we see it?
It's worth noting that people are going to have to square this belief that if you haven't done anything wrong, you should be willing to show me everything about your life.
That's what the government says to us.
Right, but when the government said that to Matt Taibbi, when they tried to coerce him, when the IRS tried to coerce him after he made his statements before Congress about the Twitter files, we all recognized that that was an invasion, that it's intimidation, that it's improper.
It's not an invasion to make the government reveal themselves.
No, you're asking them to reveal financial information about private citizens, like Hunter Biden, who's a private citizen, and potentially the President of the United States of America. There was an effort to pass a rule that made presidents have to disclose their tax forms that was struck down as unconstitutional because you can't add additional requirements to the presidency outside of what's already been written in the Constitution. 35
in his
years
role
old,
as president and vice president, this concerns behavior during his vice president, he is not entitled to privacy the way that a regular citizen or Matt Taibbi or even Hunter Biden should be, in my view.
But of course you are in part. For example, presidents to various degrees make their medical information available. Now they can take a political hit for not telling more about their medical information, but they make different decisions based on different presidencies. Trump was notoriously cagey in non-disclosing about his medical information. Joe Biden is giving less access, I just read in an article, than presidents have done in the past. People were very frustrated with Bernie Sanders because they perceived him to not be giving enough information.
That's the reality. What we're saying is that proper? And I'm saying no.
Yeah, I think that everyone has a vulnerability to, if you investigate them to the ends of the earth, you're going to find something that you can make political hay out of. And just as Donald Trump is frustrated that laws that are relatively kind of neutral on their face, he perceives them being weaponized against him to find out dirt about him, to smear him in the media. Of course, the same can be true of Joe Biden. And people who are very, very mad about Donald Trump being politically prosecuted and who are very, very mad about Matt Taibbi being politically prosecuted, having none of the same insight when it comes to Hunter Biden, it's a little bizarre to me. I think it's good to have an investigation. I don't think these people should be getting away with breaking the law. But if there was literally an FBI investigation that Comer saw, Comer's not even, remember we talked about this yesterday. It's not like Comer saying, oh my God, there's these really important red herrings on this document that the world needs to see. There does seem to be something unrelated to an actual criminal allegation that they want to expose for the sake of generating a news cycle that's not actually geared toward anything that could lead to a prosecution. So why is that? And why are we, if we're nipping at the heels of that agenda, if we're advancing that agenda and saying that's a good thing to do, I think people are going to have to square that principally with their obvious distaste for the IRS, federal institutions, making a witch hunt out of people like Matt Taibbi and Donald Trump.
Right, I'm against the IRS witch hunting non-governmental citizens.
Hunter Biden.
People in, sure, but this is different. We were talking about, this is the actual sitting president of the United States. All right, we'll have more Rising right after this.